I didn't think of it as a sacrifice at the time. It was logistics, numbers, a list that needed to be handled, and I was good at handling things. The tent deposit went through first, then the catering, half up front, the rest scheduled for the week of the event. Flowers were easy. I upgraded them without mentioning it. My mom liked arrangements that looked effortless, which usually meant they were expensive. When my dad called to say, "This is really coming together," I let him believe it had always been easy. No one asked how much I'd put in. I didn't offer. That was the pattern. Contribution without inventory. The message from my aunt came on a Tuesday afternoon between two meetings. "By the way, we're keeping the guest list tight. You're not included. No greeting, no explanation." I read it once, then again, not because it was confusing, but because it was so clean. No emotional residue, just a decision. A few minutes later, my mom followed up. "It's not personal." That part stayed with me longer than the exclusion itself. Not personal meant it didn't require discussion. It didn't require adjustment. It didn't even require acknowledgement of what I'd already done. It turned something specific into something untouchable. I didn't respond to either message. Instead, I opened my email. The contracts were straightforward. The tent company had a cancellation clause, still within the refundable window, minus a small administrative fee. The caterer required written notice. Funds could be paused, not fully returned, but enough to halt the final payment. The venue deposit was more complicated, but not impossible. Pending confirmation, the contract said. I flagged it, requested a review. None of it felt dramatic. It felt like correcting a misfiled document. For a day or two, nothing happened. Then small things began to shift. A missed call from my dad, then another. A message, quick question about the catering timeline. I didn't answer. By Friday, the tone changed. "Hey, we're having trouble reaching the tent company. Did you already coordinate final setup?" I watched the message sit unread for a while before opening it. There was no accusation yet, just confusion. The morning of the party, my phone started ringing before I got out of bed. I let it ring again. And again, by the 10th call, I knew something had fully surfaced. By the 17th, I answered. There was no greeting on his end. What happened? His voice wasn't angry. It was strained in a way I hadn't heard before. Not used to needing answers, I sat on the edge of the bed, phone resting against my ear. I aligned everything with the guest list. Silence. "What does that mean?" he asked. It wasn't confrontational. It was genuinely unclear to him. I thought about explaining the sequence, the message, the follow-up, the money, but none of that had mattered when decisions were made without me, so I kept it simple. It wasn't personal. Another silence, longer this time. In the background, I could hear movement, voices. Someone asking about tables, something about deliveries not arriving. "You canceled everything?" he asked. "Anything connected to me?" Yes. There was a shift in his breathing, not quite anger, not quite understanding. "You could told us." I let that sit between us because I could have. In the same way they could have told me I wasn't invited before I paid for half the event. In the same way someone could have asked what I was contributing, instead of assuming it would continue regardless of where I stood. "I think the information was already there," I said. "It wasn't sharp. It wasn't raised. Just placed." He didn't argue after that. He didn't apologize either. The call ended without resolution, like something paused rather than finished. Later that afternoon, I received a single message from my mom. No explanation this time. Just, "We managed." I believed her. Events like that always manage. They shrink, adapt, rearrange themselves around what's missing. Chairs get borrowed. Food gets simplified. The story gets rewritten in real time, so no one has to say what actually happened. I didn't ask how it turned out. I didn't look at photos. What stayed with me wasn't the party or even the exclusion. It was how easily my role had existed without me in it, palpable when present, noticeable only when withdrawn. A week later, I received an invoice adjustment from the venue. The flagged deposit had been released back to my account, a small, formal confirmation, no emotion attached, no commentary. Just a correction. I started keeping track after that, not in a confrontational way, not even outwardly, just a quiet inventory. What I gave, what was assumed, what was reciprocated, and more importantly, what wasn't. Nothing dramatic changed in the family. There were still calls, occasional messages, updates that didn't quite invite response but expected acknowledgement. I answered some, ignored others, not out of anger, just alignment. No one mentioned the party again, which in its own way said everything, because silence can be agreement or it can be avoidance, and sometimes it's both.